Hi, this video was sponsored by absolutely nobody. It's life advice. You send in the questions, I give you some advice. Right, I've had some good questions. I've been away for a week, so we've got a few questions. I'm going to cover them. Number one, what is the worst experience you ever had as a DJ? I'm going to give a bit of a cliched answer, and I'm going to say it's all the really miserable empty nights that you have to play when you first start DJing, especially the nights where you're playing music you don't really like to empty clubs just because you want to be a DJ and you agree to do it for basically no money, and you're stood on a cold, dark Saturday night in February. All your friends are out partying and you're stood behind some decks playing to an empty room for 4 hours, and then a bunch of your friends turn up and realize the club is absolutely empty, and they say, "Hey, how's it going?" You're like, "Yeah, it's great." And then they all leave. And then you've got another 4 hours to play to an empty club, music you don't like. So that goes on for a few years as well. Everyone has to go through that. But yeah, cliched answer, I would say those are some of the worst experiences. But I guess like the worst overall experience is when promoters say they're going to do something and they don't do it. Now, I understand the job of a promoter is hard. Having to deal with DJs is hard. But I've never been left stranded by a promoter. I've never been like left in an airport without being picked up, or had a hotel that hasn't been paid for, or anything like really bad like that. But when promoters say, "I'm going to call you tomorrow and then we'll book the plane tickets," and you're like, "This is great." So you book the time out, you make sure your family know you're going, and you have all these plans, and then they just never come back to you, and you think, gee. And I used to say, if every promoter followed through and booked me for the nights they said they were going to book me for, I would be playing 3 or 4 times more than I've ever done, because I'd say 1 in 4 actually comes through. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just really horrible to deal with on the internet. Maybe that's it. But yeah, I'd say that's the worst experience. I've never been like arrested or shot at or anything like that. So yeah, not that. Next question. Do you plan your DJ mixes? And if so, what's the thought process that goes into it? So yes and no. Well, it depends on the type of mix we're talking about. If I'm doing like a guest mix, because we're not playing in clubs anymore at the moment, if I'm doing a guest mix, then yes, I will plan it, because there'll be certain tracks I want to play. And especially like when your recorded set is an hour long, that's only really like 10 tracks. You really got to know what you're doing. You can't just blindly go into it and hope for the best, because before you've got a rhythm up, it's ended. So yes, if I was doing a guest mix and it was 60 minutes long, and even if it was 2 hours long, I'd definitely have a beginning and an end that I'd want, and I'd have an idea of the tracks that would work together. So yeah, anything that's like pre-recorded like that, yes, absolutely. When I'm doing like a podcast or something like that where it's like 2.5 hours long, or a live stream, no, I have an idea of a few tracks I want to play, and then I just make it up, and it's more fun that way. When it comes to nightclubs, you can't really plan, because if someone says, "Hey, I'm booking you," and even if they tell you it's going to be a 2-hour set, a 3-hour set, you're okay, it's going to be a 3-hour set, but you've got no idea what time of night you're playing. And even if you're the headliner, whether you're the warm-up act, it doesn't actually matter, because I've seen headliners finish at 1 and then the resident comes on behind them. So how do you plan what you're playing then, because you don't know what the running time is? And even if you know the running time, you know who's before you, you know who's after you know how long you're going to play for, you've no idea what the feeling's going to be like in the club. The guy before you might have been playing really, really down-tempo, slow music, so planning just doesn't work like that. I have usually in my mind like two different feelings. So I'll have like a building set and a banging set. And I'll have maybe like 3 tracks that I know work well to build, and 3 tracks I know work well like peak time to start my set with, just so when I walk into a club I don't panic and think, what am I going to play? I have maybe 2 or 3 that work together, and then I just go from there. And then of course, if I know I'm playing like say 2 hours at the end of the night, I'd know like, well, 2 hours is about 20 tracks, so in about 20 tracks I kind of want to finish in this area. But planning a full set from beginning to end is
I mean, you can do it, and people make out like it's you shouldn't do it, and it's not the done thing, and it's kind of like boring. But that's not necessarily the case. It's more boring for the DJ. Certainly, I'd be more bored playing a set where I knew exactly where it was going to go. And then you've got the whole thing of like reading the crowd, and what reading the crowd really means is if the nightclub's absolutely dead and everyone's miserable, you've got to change something. So going through a pre-recorded menu isn't going to work. So yes and no, more often no. Okay, next question. How do you catalog your music for when you DJ with Cdjs and USB? So I'm going to make a cop out here and say that's going to be an entirely different video because it's a huge topic. Breaking down how to organize your library is actually incredibly important, and one of the reasons why I do feel comfortable playing without planning my set is because I'm incredibly organized and I can see everything in playlists. So I use a lot of playlists. I don't rely on rekordbox choosing the next track for me or anything like that. I have a lot of playlists, but I'll cover that in a separate video. Stay tuned. Could you talk about your journey as a producer and how you got to this level? This is less about the technical side and more about the frustrations you have to go through. Okay, well, this comes down to a few things. Number one, I think it's natural musical ability. It's undeniably an advantage if you've been exposed to training, either musical theory training or learning to play an instrument when you were younger. I just think it is. It doesn't mean you can't do it if you didn't know how to play piano when you were 8. I still don't have any clue how to play the piano. I just hit keys until it sounds good, or sometimes it doesn't. The fact is, though, that if you're an accomplished pianist when you're 16 years old, you're going to find it a lot easier to start learning music production because all of the music theory is already taken care of and you don't need to worry about that. So you just need to focus on the technical side of things. So you should already have a lot of knowledge about what makes a good melody, what chords complement what, etc., etc. It's just a big advantage. And then I think I actually think that the thing that's maybe more important is your technical ability and your nerdiness. And what I mean by that is if you sit someone down in front of a computer, some people just have no idea what they're doing, and it takes them a long time to understand what everything does, and they just don't pick it up that well. Maybe they didn't grow up with technology, or maybe they're just not that way inclined. And I think DJing and producing is one of the nerdiest things you can do. Now, we all pretend it's cool, and we all wear leather jackets at night with sunglasses on, thinking we look cool. But reality is, sitting in your bedroom for 8 hours on your own, making music with electronic boxes is not cool. It's incredibly nerdy. And I think I want to use a big word, propensity, the likelihood and how drawn you are to machines and things like that. I say introverts probably make better producers, certainly engineers, and maybe it helps if you're a little bit autistic as well, because I think staring at a computer screen for 16 hours isn't for everybody, but it's an advantage. If you can put the time in and you learn quickly, I think that's a massive advantage. And the next bit, I've got a note here. Yes, your ability to listen and learn from other artists. So what I mean by this is the blueprint to making good music already exists. And when people say there are no secrets, there really aren't any secrets. You can listen to a great track and it's all there for you to see how it was done. You just need to have that brain that can analyze and hear things and then want to problem solve and go away and decide, can I remake that? Can I emulate what's going on there? So I guess it's a bit of analytical thinking. It's the ability to critically listen. And a lot of people just don't bother doing this. They just think they can wing it and make it up. But as I said, like the blueprint's already there. Great tracks have already been made, and the method already exists. And you just have to open up the book and read it. And it's one of those things that you'll have tracks that you love, but maybe you've never really sat down, listened to it, and made notes. Like, what is it about that track that you love? What is it about the melody that you love? How many melodies are playing? Actually, maybe there's 5 different melodies. You never thought of it. Like when you critically listen to a track and then try and write down each element that's playing, how many noises can you hear playing at once? Things like that, and then break down the track in your own mind. And then a thing I like to do, I've told this over and over again, I put a track into my DAW and then I copy it, and then I try to analyze what made that track great and what that producer did. And for me, one of my biggest frustrations, to actually answer the question, one of my biggest frustrations is I tended, and I still do to an extent, to make the same mistakes over and over again. I kind of get caught in a loop. So I'll make a track and I think that's good. And then because I think I've made a good track, then I'll not try and remake that track, but I'll go through the same method over and over again, or use the same synths over and over again because I'm comfortable with them. And then sometimes I can get stuck. So my learning doesn't, which way would it be? My learning doesn't go like that. My learning goes in jumps. So it goes up in leaps. And those leaps are usually when I put some effort in and I get out of my comfort zone and I critically listen to other people's music. And maybe what I'll do is I'll say, right, this month I'm only analysing tracks by this producer who I really love, and then I'll go deep into them and try and figure out what the little tips and techniques and what little things I can steal from their music. What is it that I like about their music? And then a bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen Star Trek, but the Borg roll around the universe in this big black cube, and what they do is they just assimilate other cultures. So they hit them with their tractor beam, bring them in, and then they take all the best bits of that culture and put them into their own collective, as it's called. And I think that's your best strategy for making good music. It is important to be original, but you can't be original in something this technical without learning the rules first. You need to learn the rules before you can break the rules. And learning the rules is really, really easy. You just got to put the effort in, and you've just got to be like the Borg, go around and, zap people with your laser beam. I don't think that's what I mean. I think what I mean is you need to listen to great music and then emulate that music and then make great music. It's that simple, really. But yeah, that's one of my frustrations. I think it's someone asked me at the weekend, how long do you think it takes to learn to be a producer, a competent producer, let's say a producer that will get their tracks played in nightclubs by decent DJs. And I said it can take anywhere from forever to about 2 years. I think if you're musically trained or that way inclined and you have a bit of technical know-how and you know your way around a computer, I think it can be done in 2 years if you really, really try. Or if you're a bit of an idiot like me, it can take a lot longer. So that's what I think. As ever, I think that's it. Yes, that's it. As ever, leave your comments down below. Any further questions, I will try to answer them. Increase the peace, heal the world. Ciao for now.